Hey, what's going on everyone? A couple of weeks back I put together a video that kind of detailed some of the rod and reel setups that I thought would serve a new person well. Now let me reiterate, I think gear like rods, reels, line, hooks, that's really not the most important component when it comes to catching fish. You can have the best rods, reels, lines, hooks, all that good stuff and all the technique, but if you're not fishing where there are fish, you're not going to get bit. So again, I think just hustling and electronics play a much bigger role. Now, I couldn't possibly go real in depth in terms of everything, the knots and stuff like that. So maybe I'll put that stuff aside for a future video and give you more of a general overview. I'll start by saying that every ocean reel that I have is spooled up with braid as the main line. Now, I've tried the expensive stuff, and Power Pro is probably the gold standard there, although there are other quality brands that are just as good probably. And then I've tried the economical stuff, like Cast King brand, and it's been okay. I wouldn't go super cheap and go with a complete no-name brand. Now again, I'm not an expert on this stuff, but the differences between the expensive stuff here and the economical stuff, what I've noticed is, first of all, the expensive stuff tends to be a little bit slicker and the diameter is a little bit thinner and the color won't bleed out as quickly as with the economical brands. Other than that, the economical stuff is just as strong. To sum it up, using braid is a no-brainer in my opinion. So let me go through some of the advantages and disadvantages of using braid. So advantage number one, braid compared to mono, the diameter is much thinner or smaller. So even the cheap economical braid is going to be like half the diameter of monofilament line. And if you get the uber expensive stuff, it could be, I don't know, a quarter or even less. And so the advantages of having a smaller diameter line is you can fit a lot more line on your reel. So if you're going deep water fishing, you can pack a lot more line, or you can use a smaller, more, nimble reel and still reach the fish down deep or far away. Zero line memory. So everyone who's ever used a monofilament knows that it gets all kinky and that's just a pain in the neck. Zero stretch. So that means that if you have a lot of line out and you feel a tug or a bite, you swing on that fish and all the energy, if you're using braid, goes right into the hook set. I don't know if a lot of people know this, but if you use mono has a lot of stretch. So if you have like 50, 100 yards of line out and you swing on a fish with mono, a lot of that energy goes into, or is dissipated by line stretch. Braid will cut through kelp. So if you have a big fish and he's, somewhere deep into a kelp bed and you're in a tug of war, braid will eventually saw through that kelp and you have a much better chance of getting that fish out of there than with mono. Okay, let's cover some of the disadvantages. Okay, it is super abrasive, so the same qualities that allow it to cut through kelp is going to allow it to cut through your hands, and if you're pulling on the stuff with your teeth, it'll cut through enamel. So be careful with this stuff. Be really careful. Number two, it is seemingly expensive, but only seemingly so. So if you fish mono, you understand that every once in a while you have to replace the line. It just gets like cruddy and kinky and it'll lose its strength over time. With braid, that doesn't seem to be the case. I've got braid that's 2 years old and it's working just as good now as when I spooled it up. And if you feel like you do need to get new braid on your reel, what you can do is you can pull out all the braid and then spool it back up in reverse, if you know what I mean. Okay, because the stuff way down deep in the spool is still brand new. So initially it seems like it's more expensive than mono, but in reality it's actually more economical. And it saves you the hassle of respooling. Finally, because braid is so slick, you can't just wind it onto a spool as you would with mono. So let me show you this. So this is your reel spool. If you were to put braid directly onto this spool, under pressure the braid, because it is so slick, will just spin, right? And so what people will do is they'll put like a little layer of mono, and they call it backing, and then they'll tie braid on it and then wind the rest up with braid. Some of the new reels are coming with little nubs or something like that, so you can kind of anchor the braid onto the reel itself without the need of backing. One more note about braid: when you wind the braid onto a reel, you need to pack it down really tight. I don't have any like fancy tools or gizmos, so what I'll do is I'll over spool a little bit, and then the first time out I'll maybe like hook up an 8-12 ounce sinker and send it way down deep and then wind it up like that. You definitely don't want to be going after fish, especially big fish with line that has not been packed down really tight. Okay, let's go over the leader. Okay, so here on the left hand side in black you have the braid, and then on the right hand side you have the mono or fluoro leader. Okay, so typically the main line is going to be, for me, ocean fishing, it could be like 30 pounds, 50 pounds. And then I always want the mono or fluoro to be a little bit lighter than that, you know, maybe 10-20 pounds, because I want this leader to break before the expensive braid does. The length of the mono or fluoro leader is going to be roughly about 9 feet. It gives you a little bit of room if like a barracuda gets hold of your lure and defrays the end, you can cut off like a foot and retie and still have a good amount of leader length. If it's way more than 9 foot, this little connection knot ends up on your spool and underneath your thumb, and as you cast it out, it'll annoy the bleep out of you. And it also means that this connection knot, okay, this bump, has to go through more eyes of the rod as you cast it out, and that can decrease casting distance. The knot that I use to connect the braid main line to the leader is called the modified Albright knot. Now I should let you know that I don't think the modified Albright is the best knot. I think the best one is the FG knot. It's supposed to be the thinnest and ultimately the strongest. But the modified Albright is pretty good. It hasn't failed me yet if I tie it right. And most importantly, to me, it's the easiest to tie when I'm out in the open water. So I continue to use it. And then finally, at the end of the leader, you have, I guess people call it the terminal tackle. And you're going to have to excuse my artwork. It was never a forte of mine. But here you have the mono leader or fluoro leader. And then you have a connection knot here. The connection knot that I choose to use is called the uni knot. And I think the uni knot is one of the most universally best knots out there. Do I think it's the strongest? No. I mean, the guys that are on the what do you call it, the bass tour, are using fancy knots that involve 2 strands, but I've never had the uni knot fail on me. It's one of the strongest single strand knots, and it is easy to tie. Again, I'm not going to have the time to demonstrate that, so I'll have to save that for a later video. And then here you have, this is a barrel swivel. Okay, I typically will choose a decent quality 100 pound, 150 pound barrel swivel. And then the one component that I think you probably don't know about, but is an absolute no-brainer, is called, well, I call it a paper clip. And let me show you what it is. So here's the item. I call it a paper clip. They're often called power clips. The name that's probably the most recognizable is the Tactical Anglers, but I've tried other brands and they seem just fine. There's not an easier, there's not a more convenient way to quickly switch out lures and jigs, especially if you're a big, lure fisherman like I am. Okay, let me demonstrate the terminal tackle and more specifically the power clip. So I'm using braid here, but you're gonna have to use your imagination. This is gonna be clear mono or fluoro leader. The knot here is going to be the uni knot, and then you have a barrel swivel here, typically rated like 100, 150 pounds. And what it does is it prevents line twist. And then you have the power clip here. And I'm going to demonstrate just how quickly and conveniently you can switch out lures. It's literally that quick and simple. Okay. So you could argue that something like this is just as quick and as convenient, but it will never, ever be as strong as this guy. I've lost fish using these things. I've never had one of these things fail on me. So the power clip can be used with more than just jigs. Okay? You can also set up rigs here. So this is monoline and this is a double dropper loop rig. Just tie a barrel swivel, another barrel swivel to the end of the double dropper loop rig, and you can snap or work this into the power clip as well. So if you're fishing a jig and you're not getting action, you can quickly take it off and then clip in a barrel swivel with a double dropper loop rig and fish bait. So again, to me, the power clip is a no-brainer. Okay, I want to wrap up this video with a quick description of the double dropper loop rig. Again, I'm not going to have the time to show you how to tie this thing. There are plenty of videos on YouTube and maybe I'll make one later. But as I've said in the past, like bait, when all else fails, bait is probably your best bet. So again, here you have your barrel swivel here that you're going to clip into your power clip. Again, about 100, 150 pounds. This is going to be typically, if you're going after rockfish, they're not fussy. So 30-pound mono here. The torpedo sinker, I'm going to say 8 ounces on average. If you're fishing deeper water like 300, then you might need maybe 12 or 16 ounces. The distance between the sinker and the first loop, and again, rockfish don't care, maybe a foot, maybe a couple of feet in between the two loops. The hooks, I would say 3/0 circle hooks if you are kind of like a new person. Circle hooks mean that you don't have to swing and set the hook. They kind of like set the fish for you. They hook the fish for you. It makes it simple. You don't have to jerk. You just, when you feel a good couple of thumps, you just start winding and the fish should stick. The universal bait is probably a squid cut into strips. Let me circle back to the sinker. If you are fishing deeper water like 200, 300 feet and you're on a party boat, okay, they're probably going to insist that you go heavier than conditions would kind of dictate, because they want everyone going straight down and not going off to the left or right and getting tangled. So if you're in a kayak, you can probably get away with a little lighter lead as opposed to if you're on a party boat. If you're on a party boat, they'll probably insist that you start with 12 ounces and then go up from there. And you know, when you get to like 12, 16 ounces, winding that thing back up is a real bear. Especially if you don't have a rail like on a boat to rest your rod upon. So if you're in a kayak, maybe you kind of prop up one of your knees and you rest the rod on your knee as you wind. Okay, that'll just about wrap up this video. Thanks for sticking with me. Again, not super exciting or sexy, but I'm hoping you found it useful. And if you have, hit that subscribe and like button and hit the bell so that you'll be notified of future videos that I release. Also got some cool stuff coming up. I'll be heading up to the Sierras in the next couple of weeks. Maybe do one more local trip in the hunt for lingcod. So if you're interested, give me a shout at adventureforth@gmail.com. As always, get out there, have fun, be safe, and we will see you soon. Bye for now.